Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul, and I'm a nerd, and it is officially the first day of summer. What that means is that we have just received the first sign of summer, which is Irv. Now, I'll tell you, Irv is the best Father's Day gift I ever got, and before you start thinking weird ways that could be applied or be taken, Irv is the guy that mows the lawn here. And my wife got Irv to mow the lawn once for Father's Day about 4 years ago, and he has never stopped. It is absolutely the best Father's Day gift I ever got. Can you believe that it's March 26th and we're mowing the lawn? And not only that, it needs to be mowed. Not many people know that we work out of my home, which is a 140-year-old farmhouse in Dundee, Michigan. And back where the barn used to be is, I guess, the remnants of the fact that the barn was a pig barn. And if you can put two and two together, you can imagine that things grow very quickly back where the pigs were. And it's already gotten to the point that that we definitely need to mow the lawn. So welcome to summer, everyone, and also welcome to the March 2012 virtual user group meeting that we affectionately call the water cooler. Today we are talking about how to reconcile a credit card statement and why you might want to do that as opposed to just paying the bill at the end of the month. And also we are going to talk about, help me out, Mary Jo. What's your topic? Oh, don't give me that look. Oh my gosh, it's the blank deer in the headlights there.
Long day already.
What is the other topic? You've got notes there in front of you. It's going to be a very exciting second topic. So exciting.
I'm talking about how to add a receipt and have it show up on your deposit.
That's right. That's right.
Or client related. That was kind of fun to watch Paul just kind of hammer for a change.
Another accounting related topic. Perhaps you own the building, and so therefore you get rent payments from your tenants, and those don't show up on tab statements. Or maybe you are getting a refund check for some overpayment, and so you haven't billed somebody in tabs. As you know, you put those things in tab, you put payments into tabs, they show up on your deposits. But how do you get these things to show up? Mary Jo will show you that. So we're going to start with that topic because it's quick and we want to get it out of the way, and then Mary Jo and I are going to argue about how to do the other thing.
Okay. So now that he's already told you half of what I'm going to talk about.
Oh, come now.
So we're going to talk about getting those miscellaneous receipts that you didn't put in through accounts payable or by writing a check, or the client-based receipts when payments come in. And like Paul said, if you get a refund check from Office Max or the Bureau of Workers' Comp, or you have a rent check that comes in from one of your attorneys that's renting space, we need to have a place to put those in GL, which means a manual journal entry. Well, when we make manual journal entries and we go to do our deposit slip, we'll see all those nice little credit card receipts and the payments that came through tabs, but we don't see those receipts on there, and that deposit includes those. So that total is different than what actually goes into the bank. And we want things to be as clear as possible and as correct as possible to leave that paper trail. So we don't want one of those entries hanging out there, not included on that printed deposit slip that you get when you get done entering those into GL. So to correct that, you're already making a manual journal entry already. So when you come in to do your journal entry and you go to put in that deposit, and it's always on the bank account side. I don't care what account you want to debit for your expense or a liability or whatever it is that you're paying. The other side doesn't matter. We want it to show up on the reconciliation as the receipt side, which is the bank account. So in this instance, I'm just going to, I think it's 111. We'll see. Of course not. 1110. And we will come in and get our bank account and go ahead and put in here that this is a refund from whatever, or rent or whatever. And you'll see over here we've got some boxes. And usually you never check the reconcile. That's how you, when you're reconciling your account, it will automatically reconcile and that box will be checked. But you have this little receipt box. And a lot of people didn't know what this receipt box does. Well, it's just for this situation. If you have a miscellaneous check and you want to count it as a receipt, we go ahead and check that box. We can even say what type of a receipt it is. And I'm going to just say that it was a cash receipt. And we're going to debit that account for $50 and go ahead and save it. And I'll just do other office supplies or something for my other side of the entry and save that. And I guess I will save that as a credit in this instance because I'm actually depositing money. So I've got my two sides of my entry here. Now, if I go over into my deposit slip, that, and we're going to go into the deposit slip, and I'm just going to start a new one, and we'll do that 1110 account, and you can see where it says select receipt. Well, now this is a receipt. That's where it's getting those receipts from. They automatically are checked as a receipt when you enter a payment in Tabs, but here you can manually check it and have it show up. Then I can go ahead and do my regular deposit slip, include everything that's on there, and my total will then be correct. So it's a pretty simple thing, but sometimes unknown thing that we have out there. So are there any questions about how to add a miscellaneous check or refund and make it a receipt?
I don't see any questions.
Pretty straightforward stuff.
Very good. Well, straightforward stuff, but nonetheless something that lots of people ask about. There's always something that gets put into GL as a manual journal entry going into the bank account, and 9 times out of 10, people are wondering how to get that on the deposit slip. In fact, I know a lot of times I'll hear of people that just plain leave it off the deposit slip and then try to manually fudge things to get it in there, when in fact it's really just a matter of checking that one box. Now, this is our next topic is a topic we've covered before, and we're going to do a little bit of 60 minutes point counterpoint because Mary Jo has one way of doing it and I have another. And quite frankly, the first time we covered this topic, we covered it my way. And after having talked it over with Mary Jo this morning, I'm not certain that you need to quite go that distance unless you have a very large credit card statement with lots of different partners having the same card and the need to reconcile in this way. First off, let me set things up. Let's say you have a MasterCard from Bank of America, and on it go all sorts of different miscellaneous charges. Maybe the 3 partners, will make things simple, the 3 partners each have cards with the same number, so it's the same account, and you have one that you use internally to pay small bills that you need to within the accounting department. It's got a balance of $1,000. You go to pay that $1,000. Without doing it the way that we're going to describe, what you would do at that point is you'd kind of figure out what that $1,000 breaks down to. You'd write one check to Bank of America in accounts payable. You have a vendor, Bank of America, and you would go over to that second screen when you're adding an invoice, and you would break it down. You know, this much was for office supplies, this much was for meals, this much was for whatever. The problem with that is you can do it that way. You can make the one payment for $1,000 to Bank of America and go over to the second screen and break it down by adding the lines that would break it down. You've got to kind of add up all the different charges into the different categories and come up with how much is office expense or office supplies, how much is meals, how much is legal research. B, you really don't get the individual. I know I'm subtitling here, but you don't get the individual detail that you would if each of those charges were entered straight into accounts payable. And therefore, if you're paying Office Max sometimes with MasterCard and sometimes by writing a check, you can't go in to accounts payable and get a summary of all the money you've paid to Office Max. Because if some of that money was paid this way using a credit card, you don't really know how much of that was attributable to Office Max by looking at the vendor Office Max. The other disadvantage of doing it this way is you do not know how much money you owe, and you don't post those individual charges on the date they were incurred. And you don't know how much money you're owing until you get that bill from Bank of America MasterCard and go in and enter it as a bill to be paid. What we are proposing is that instead you create an account in General Ledger and you post these charges to that account when you get them. So when the partner comes back and hands you a receipt from lunch for $75, that goes in right then and there against either a negative asset account or a liability account. And we'll explain the difference in a second. And then when you get that bill from Bank of America for $1,000, you already know that you owe $1,000, and you already have posted it to the appropriate individual accounts. And now, because you've done it that way, if $150 of that $1,000 that you're paying to Bank of America is for Office Max, that $150 will be included when you print a report from accounts payable showing all the money you've ever paid to Office Max in that period. This, of course, is especially important if you have 1099 vendors that you occasionally pay by credit card. If you're going to pay or produce the 1099s or even get the 1099 numbers from accounts payable, you need individual invoices for those transactions, even those that you paid by credit card. Now, right now you're probably thinking, oh, this is wonderful, I need to do this, or not. We won't go there. I need to take notes. I'm going to stress that you not take notes, because what we're about to do in the next 15 to 20 minutes is going to be about 30 minutes worth of training, but we have a time constraint, and we're going to go very fast, and we're going to explain things, and we want you to, instead of taking notes, we want you to focus on what we're saying and focus on how we're describing things. And the reason I'm telling you not to take notes is because what you're going to want to do, if this is what you want to investigate using, is pay attention and listen as we're explaining now, and then go back to the recorded version that should be available about an hour or two after we finish today, and re-listen, and maybe re-listen again, and maybe re-listen again. Basically, what I'm telling you to do is put your pencil down, pay attention to what we're saying, relax, absorb what we're saying, and then if this is something that you want to do, go back and re-listen and take your notes down. We are recording this, and if you don't want to wait until we get the notification out to you that the recording is available, you can simply go to attorneycomputersystems.com and click on the link for water cooler, and when it's up, you will see it there at the very top. Now, there's two ways to do this. I'm going to show you the first way. Mary Jo is then going to explain the differences between that way and the second way, which is simpler. And then we're going to have point-counterpoint. We're going to argue about who's right. And at the end, one of us will get a trophy. So we were going to want everybody to vote. Now, so here we are. In order to do this, you need to create an account in your general ledger to represent the credit card. It is going to be, in my scenario, an asset account, but it's going to carry a negative balance. It's not really an asset, it's a liability. It's what we call a negative asset, which in effect is a liability. The reason you want to make it an asset account is because we also want to make it a bank account. And you can only make an asset account type a bank account. So you're going to want to set up the Bank of America MasterCard, or whatever it's called, has an asset, balance type debit, whatever sort sequence you want, and you're going to put in the bank account info. For account number, of course, you probably will just put the first and last 4 digits of the card number just so you can reference it, or maybe just the last 4. Once you've done that, you want to set up a bank account in the accounts payable. Same sort of thing. Go to Setup and Bank Accounts, and I've set up Bank of America MasterCard. Now the reason for that is that you're going to want to post these manual transactions. You're not printing a check for that $50 charge you made at Office Max. You're not printing a check for the $75 receipt you just got from John Smith, the partner, who took a potential client to lunch. So you're going to set up a bank account, and you're going to give it a last check number that has some sort of artificially high numbering sequence so that you can let it automatically auto-number your manual transactions. And then you're going to want to make the cash account number and the accounts payable account number the same as the GL account that you set up. Okay? Now, after you've done that, you can go ahead now and enter invoices. Now, I have a couple in here, so I don't need to enter them. I have a 1-2 Office Supply Megastore that goes straight through, and this is actually the one that Mary Jo is going to use as her example, so it's the other one that's mine. That is a $100 charge. The amount to pay is $100. It's automatically going to assign an artificially high check number. That's just your reference point. Date paid is the same. And it goes over to General Ledger as account office supplies. What we are doing here is writing a check against a liability account to reflect the fact that we owe $100, and we are at that very moment posting its office supplies. Now think about that for a second. If we waited until we got the bill, right now we have put this in with a date that corresponds with where our demo data lives, so it's 11/1/2011. If we had waited until we got the bill on December 1st from MasterCard, this wouldn't go in until then. We wouldn't know that we owed this $100, and we wouldn't have the invoice date properly reflect the month in which the charge was incurred. We instead would be entering kind of a lump sum payment to MasterCard of $1,000, and it would have a December of 2011 date instead of a November of 2011 date. Now let's go ahead and enter a new one. Let's say we're going to pay Office Supply Megastore again, and we'll make this 11/3, and we'll make it on invoice number 10103. And here we're going to pay $300, and it's office supplies. And say again, it is a manual check. Mary Jo just helped me remember that. That's very important. You are not going to print a check. This is a manual check. Check number, once I choose the bank account, is going to automatically give me the next number. Due date, I do need to put in the date. Normally you'd be doing this on the date it was incurred probably, but here we're kind of fudging back to a fake date. And office supplies, once again, since we always write checks or manual transactions from Office Supply Megastore and post them to Office Supplies, it's going to automatically default to that. Those of you that are familiar with this process know that it will also ask me if I want to bill the client for this charge, which I don't. It'd be nice if we could bill the client for all our office supplies, but we don't. And we're done. So the theory here is enter these transactions using this methodology when you get them rather than when you incur them, when you get the receipt for the original purchase, rather than when you get the bill from MasterCard. This means that we now have individual entries in AP to reflect these individual charges going to the correct vendors, especially important for 1099. Now here's where Mary Jo and my paths diverge. You'll remember that when I set up the GL account, I set it up as a bank account, and the reason I did that was because I wanted to be able to go into General Ledger, and I want to be able to use reconciliation to reconcile that credit card. So I'm going to pull up my Bank of America MasterCard. My ending balance is, according to Bank of America, would now be -250. I forgot to post that transaction. So that 300 is not going to show up. It's -250. A liability of 400 is what the beginning balance is. A liability of 250 is what the ending balance is. And then I can just go through my statement and say, yep, they've got my payment from last month. They show it on this month's statement. Yep, they show this. Yep, they show this. These are my two charges for the month. I now have a difference of 0. I am ready to finalize, and I can actually reconcile my statement. Now, in a big firm with lots of attorneys having either individual credit cards or having one credit card that has many cards, one credit card account that has many cards, this may or may not be appropriate because it allows you to reconcile in this reconciliation mode, something that you're familiar with already from reconciling your bank account. Now, Mary Jo is going to show you that that may not matter for a number of different reasons. One being that when you reconcile a bank account, you may have stuff that's 6 months old that still hasn't reconciled. That is not the case here, as she'll describe. So Mary Jo, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can describe the other methodology.
Like Paul said, when you have a credit card, whatever you've charged, it's going to be on the statement, and it's going to have clear. It's not going to be something you're carrying over from month to month to month, aside from what you owe. And you may have to enter interest and things like that you can put in there. A couple things I differ on, Paul, is I don't need to reconcile it. I can see it on the statement. I can print a GL report, and I can see it there. If I go over to my scenario and I look at I do everything the same. I still would enter my costs in AP. I would map it to my account. that I set up. But I would set my account up as a liability because it is a true liability. I don't have to deal with negative balances in a reconciliation. I can just go in and I can see that it's down in my liability section where it belongs. I don't have to try to remember that it was a negative asset, which means it's a liability. And your accountant may or may not want to see it that way.
Let me interrupt and show him.
Okay, you go ahead and do that while I'm, because see here on his balance sheet, you can see Paul's up at the top.
I'm a negative liability or negative asset.
And then mine, if you scroll down, is actually under the liability section. Now, some of your accountants may really need to see that. They want it down in the liability, and then you might not have a choice as to make this an asset or not. And if that's the case, you're going to do it as a liability. You're just going to go to your general ledger report, print it out for that month, and look at all the transactions. You've got a running balance on the side that actually tells you this is what your starting balance was. It should match what your beginning balance was on your statement. And if you go down through your statement, if there's something missing in that GL, you'll know you have not put it in AP yet, and that you need to go over and do that to the correct account in the expense accounts there. And then you always have to add that interest. If you are carrying a balance from month to month, you're going to have to make a manual journal entry or something to apply it to that interest charge. So that's one thing that, and I mean, I just don't know. To me, it's overkill to have to go reconcile another account and check it off when I have that in front of me. But like he said, if you do have a lot of attorneys or a lot of different charge cards or something, maybe that is something that you want to have that visual in front of you that you're checking off each one of those things. One other thing that I disagree with Paul on the check numbers, I don't know that it's necessary to make such a big number. You're in a charge account. Who cares what the check number is? If you start with number 1, who cares? You're in your charge account. And just continue to up the numbers from number 1.
You're right about that. I tend to give them a 999, 998, 997 sort of starting number.
Yeah.
Just so I know that the 999s are this MasterCard, the 998s for that MasterCard.
See, I get the trophy now. See?
No, you don't get the trophy. Leanne decides who gets the trophy.
So anyway, that's the differences that I see.
Show them the general ledger report that you print to reconcile your way.
To the general ledger, I'm just going to do a report, and I'm going to go back a month just because of that payment that I did would have been in October, of 11. We're on different dates here in our sample data, but and I'm going to go put it in my account, which was 2285, I think, for mine. And if I say OK, preview, and now you'll see that I have my beginning balance up here was 375. I've got my payment that came in, and then I've got 2 charges here. I got the $100 charge to Office Supply Company, and then I've got my filing fee that I paid at the court for $150, and that left my balance at $250. And all of my charges would be right down the list as I went, and they'd all, my beginning balance, ending balance should equal whatever it is that's on that statement. So I can see it all. I can print it all right from here. So.
Well, leave it there for a sec. One thing I'll point out, this number should equal what you get on your bill. Now, if you have interest on the bill, if you're being charged interest, or perhaps there's some charge on there that you had not anticipated and had not made an entry for yet, this number will not equal what's on your bill. But as you can see, if you've got a small bill with a couple entries or even 10 or 20 entries, you can look at this and you can pretty much check it off. You still have to reconcile it to find out where the difference is. You'll still have to check this off and then check it off on your bill from the credit card company and do the same with this. My argument is that if you do have a lot of entries, they may not come out in exactly the same order on the credit card statement as they do here. They may not. And therefore, having the reconciliation where you can check things off in any order may be what works for you. But again, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another.
And the other thing, I'm dealing with positive numbers. I can see that I had $375 balance, and I had my payments, and now my balance is $250. Whereas when you're in the negative asset, you're seeing a negative $375 and a negative this and that.
Yes.
That just starts to get a little confusing.
That is a little bit confusing. We can't do it any other way if we're going to make it a bank account. It's got to be a negative asset, and that does provide a little bit of confusion. So bottom line is, whichever way you choose, whether you choose to reconcile and use the actual bank account reconciliation module or routine that comes with General Ledger, or you still reconcile, but you do it simply by printing out this General Ledger report with the right date range and compare it against your statement, nonetheless, it is way better. You can tell I have teenagers. way better to do it this way than to simply lump them all together into one payment to MasterCard, because here you're getting that individual entry in accounts payable as an invoice to a specific vendor for every charge. Every charge can be tracked properly with the proper date, with the proper amount. The 1099 information is there for reporting. It's just a much cleaner way of doing things, and then you know that you are getting billed by the credit card company for what you anticipated getting billed for. So.
One more thing, we showed you how to put in those charges when you were making, the attorney's handing you that receipt, but we didn't show you how to make the payments and how to show those, how those will show up over here. So if we go back to AP, you're still going to be doing an invoice, and this time you may be printing that check to MasterCard or whatever we call this, Bank of America. But this time you're writing out the check to Bank of America. And then once you've paid that amount, whatever that $375 is, you're still going to pick whatever your account is. I was number 3.
Nope.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. This will be coming
it's still coming out of your operating account.
This is coming out of the operating account. On the general ledger page is where I'm picking my number 3 to pay that balance. So this is that liability account minus $22.85 that we're posting that payment to. So it's coming out of your checking account here to Bank of America, and on the second page it's going to whatever that liability account is, or negative asset account, whichever you've done.
So effectively that reduces the amount that you owe, that liability, if you will, back down to 0. Unlike a bank account, these charges that remain unreconciled only go back one period. If you have something that isn't reconciled and it's not on next month's statement, then there's a problem. I mean, what credit company card company isn't going to bill you in the next period for a charge you incurred this month? None. So unlike a bank account, you don't have anything that's going to remain unreconciled when you get done with the reconciliation. So frankly, after having talked to Mary Jo about this morning, I'm changing my story, and I am awarding Mary Jo the trophy. And we do have little trophies. We use them for show and tell around here when we show all the neat stuff we've learned each couple of weeks. She is going to get another trophy for the best way to reconcile a credit card statement. So there you have it, how to reconcile your credit card statements and properly reflect those individual transactions, those individual charges that you're making in accounts payable, so they go through to the right accounts and get charged into the right periods, with the right dates, with the right amounts, with whatever else you need to tag to those individual transactions, and still be able, of course, to lump them all together into the one account, being the credit card statement. And, of course, the other topic that we had, which, Mary Jo, I'm sorry, what was that again? Making anything that you've entered directly into general ledger into a receipt, those rent payments that you're getting from the tenants in your building, those refund checks you get from Bureau of Workers' Comp or Office Max, or anything that you get paid that isn't something you've billed through Tabs, how to get that onto the deposit statement, deposit slip. Leanne, do we have any questions?
There are no questions, although I have to tell you, I did get one vote.
You got a vote from who? You got a vote from Bill, didn't you?
You bet.
And it was for Mary Jo, wasn't it?
No, it was for me. That's what I'm saying. I got one vote.
You got a vote?
Yeah.
From Bill?
I did.
Well, I was going to say I was shocked that Bill didn't have a question, but he always does have some way to make his presence known. Well, that sums it up. That's our March 2012 virtual user group meeting that we, of course, affectionately call the water cooler. It is summer. Irv is driving by the window right now as we speak. So those of you that don't have the fortune of having an Irv, I think you're going to have to go home and start your lawnmowers up this evening. We will see you again in April, where our topics will be, help me out with this one, Mary Jo, do we know?
How to use help.
Oh, that's right.
Different systems, and it is how to
use text and image elements in the statement layout designer. So basically how to make your bills look a little bit fancier, and how to use the very full-featured and very rich help systems that are built into Accounts Payable, General Ledger, Trust Accounting, Tabs3, and Practice Master. Thanks much, everyone. Have a good month, and we will see you next month. Bye-bye.